Got a loaded show tonight. Got a loaded show tonight. Prediction season continues on the air raid during the month of August, and we get games that count next week. So if you ever catch yourself feeling a little sad around this time of season, it's not that you need new friends. It's not that you need a raise at your job. It's not that you even need a new job. It's just you need college football. I need college football. I catch myself getting down sometimes, but then I remember, hey, next week they're kicking off in Dublin, Ireland. Even though if I'm not a fan of neutral site games, uh, there will be plenty of games on next week, and then the week after that, we get this thing rolling. We get this thing rolling. So with that, I came up with the idea that I'm going to draft every game, the best game each week of the regular season in college football. I'm also going to rank my top quarterbacks in the Big Ten. I did it for the SEC. Now I need to do it for the Big Ten. I'm going to make my prediction for who is going to win the Heisman Trophy. I have been given a crystal ball. I have seen into the future, and I'm going to tell you who's going to win the Heisman Trophy in December. I was asked this question recently. Is Kalen DeBoer on the hot seat at Alabama? I could go a whole show on that, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. The latest on the NCAA versus the courts, the eligibility conundrum. I wasn't going to address it on tonight's show, but there's been mounting pressure, and I'm going to do it. And I have more fall camp intel, some news and notes from around the country. Jam-packed as jam-packed gets. Welcome into the Air Raid with Parker Kelley. One quick favor. First of all, if you're watching live, thank you. Please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. It's free. It costs you nothing. It really helps the show. And we want to make this thing as big and as great as we possibly can. And we can't do that unless you are subscribed. So please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. If you think you're subscribed but not 100% sure, just go ahead and double check that you are. Enough of me begging. Let's get into the show. I have taken it upon myself to draft the best game in each week of the 2026 college football season. I included week 0 in here because why not? Now, week 0 may not be the official start to the college football season, but I have chosen to include it. So week 0, there are plenty of games that I could have chosen from. I could have went NC State at Virginia. I could have went TCU in North Carolina over in Dublin. I decided to go a different route here. I decided to go with a group of 6 game, the only group of 6 game that will be mentioned on the slate, Memphis at UNLV. 2 teams with playoff aspirations because that is legally part of the college football playoff process is that a group of 6 team is included. Memphis, they have a new head coach in Charles Huff. UNLV, Dan Mullen returns for his second season as the head coach of UNLV. Had a really good year last year, and they meet in week 0. 9 o'clock kickoff, caffeine special. I will be up for that one. So that's where I decided to go in week 0. In week 1, not the most loaded slate of games for a Labor Day weekend on a Saturday. There's Clemson at LSU, Baylor and Auburn in Atlanta, or Oregon and Boise State, which don't sleep on that game. Boise State is my favorite to make the college football playoff, and they play Oregon, who is a national championship contender. If we're talking sleeper games as well, I wanted to add this to the mix. UCLA plays on the road at Cal, or up the street, should I say. Cal is one of those dark horse teams in the ACC that I've been talking about with JKS, their quarterback, and UCLA. They just brought in Bob Chesney from James Madison. So old Pac-12 matchup, that's in week 1. It's a sleeper. It's not going to be the most prominent game. And Louisville and Ole Miss, they play Sunday night, 6:30 in Nashville. I'll be in attendance for that game, so we'll have coverage from Nashville there for that game. But I decided to go Clemson at LSU. This is where game day is going to be. This is where all the big primetime shows are going to be. Lane Kiffin's debut at LSU. Dabo Swinney, will he right the ship at Clemson? They're going to the other Death Valley to find out, and that'll be a big week 1 game. Week 2, just a loaded slate in Week 2. You have Ohio State at Texas, uh, Oklahoma at Michigan for the back end of a home and home there. You have Oregon at Oklahoma State, Arizona State at Texas A&M, Mississippi State at Minnesota, which I actually talked about on the last show. A matchup that's not commonly played, and if we're going to have this debate about which conference is superior between the Big Ten and the SEC, Mississippi State is regarded as one of the lower tier teams in the SEC, and Minnesota is a middle of the pack team in the Big Ten. Now, whoever wins this game is not going to determine. That's not the end all say all about who the best conference is. It's a data point. It's a data point, and I care about regular season matchups. Tennessee at Georgia Tech, Arkansas at Utah. That's going to be a fun one. A 9:15 kickoff, I'm told, in Salt Lake City. Ohio State, Texas. That is the primetime marquee matchup of Week 2. Two national championship contenders in the preseason, Julian Sayin versus Arch Manning. Another back end of a home and home. Ohio State and Texas is the game I'm looking forward to most in Week 2. At Week 3, a little bit of a lighter slate, but there's one big game. One big game that might be the most watched college football game of the entire season, and that is LSU at Ole Miss. Do I even need to explain why? No, I don't. That's pretty self-explanatory. Toxic. That atmosphere is going to be toxic, and what I would give to have a ticket to be on the 50-yard line in Oxford at 6:30 on September 19th. Buckle up, folks. Week 4, you could go a variety of directions during Week 4. You have Oregon at USC, you have Oklahoma at Georgia, Texas A&M at LSU, Ole Miss at Florida, Iowa at Michigan, Texas at Tennessee. I decided to go with Oregon at USC because if USC is going to make the playoffs like I think they will, they get Oregon at home this year, they get Washington at home this year, they get Ohio State at home, they're going to have to win at least 2 of those games. And this would be a start. Beating a big-time opponent in your building with expectations as high as they are for Lincoln Riley in year 5 on the job, it's playoff or bust. And this is the start of what proves to be a very difficult schedule for USC. So I have Oregon at USC as the primetime matchup in Week 4. In Week 5, not as much of a heavyweight of a slate as some of the other weeks. You have Washington at USC. You have Ohio State at Iowa. And we know Iowa at night is a tough place to play. Miami at Clemson. Who knows how good Clemson is going to be this year? We figure Miami is going to be a national championship contender, but how good is Clemson? You have Auburn at Tennessee. Alex Golesh, their head coach, returning to the place he was the offensive coordinator at in 2022 when Tennessee had that magical offense. I decided to go Washington at USC here as well. So another big game for USC that I would pick today, USC to win that game. They need to win that game if they want to make the playoffs. So that's why I talk about Washington as being a team that can wreck everything in the Big Ten. You go on the road at USC and you sneak a win, that suddenly starts to get a little tight around the neck area if you're Lincoln Riley at USC. At Week 6, what I've loved, one of the matchups that I loved in recent memory, that's honestly a new rivalry in the SEC, and that's Georgia at Alabama. You get Iowa at Washington, which is a Friday night game. You get Texas at Missouri. You get USC at Penn State, which is the whiteout game. And you get Texas at Oklahoma, the Red River Shootout, referred to by no other name on this show. Georgia at Alabama. That's the easy option there. SEC championship stakes, I'm sure. We get a good look at whoever's starting at quarterback for Alabama. They get a big-time home game against another national championship contender in the Georgia Bulldogs. Week 7. Week 7 is one of my favorite weeks of this college football season, just kind of going through the calendar here. You get Ohio State at Indiana, the biggest game in the history of Indiana football. You get Notre Dame at BYU, which I'm hoping becomes a new rivalry in the sport. Notre Dame not playing USC this year, so they replace USC on their calendar with BYU, which I actually, I hate that we're not getting the traditional USC Notre Dame matchup. But Notre Dame at BYU, I hope they play this game every year. I hope they play this game every year. Florida is at Texas that day. Missouri is at Ole Miss. Alabama at Tennessee, the third Saturday in October, which, by the way, some uniform detailing on that game, which I'll actually touch on at the tail end of the show. So make sure that you're tuned in for that. And then you get Penn State at Michigan. Ohio State at Indiana is the clear-cut choice here. Two preseason national championship teams, both within the top 6 of the preseason AP poll, the biggest game in the history of Indiana football. Bloomington is going to be rocking that day. Season tickets already sold out for the Hoosiers. It's a clear choice. It is the clear choice there. Week 8, Ole Miss goes to Texas that day. Oregon is at Illinois. They'll play in Champaign. Indiana at Michigan. Texas A&M at Alabama. And Houston at Utah. Well, I have Ole Miss at Texas. Texas has the most talented roster they've had under Steve Sarkisian. Ole Miss, can they replicate some of the magic that they were able to create last year with Trinidad Chambliss? That's going to be a fun matchup. And plus, I couldn't tell you if Ole Miss has ever played at Texas before. I'm sure it's happened in the history of college football, but personally, I've never witnessed it. So I'm really excited for that. Week 9, loaded Week 9 slate. Ohio State at USC is that day. Another one of the big home games for USC that they get this year. Arizona State is at BYU. That was a really big game 2 years ago. Could be a really big game this year as well. Now, I put this on the schedule for selfish purposes, if I'm being 100% transparent with you. Washington is at Nebraska that day. Now, I know Nebraska doesn't have super lofty expectations this year. However, Nebraska is wearing their all-black uniforms. It's Halloween. I have a big soft spot in my heart for the city of Lincoln, and I love that Nebraska fan base. So I put this game on here. They got a sympathy vote. If I'm being just 100% honest with you. Florida at Georgia. College football had an excellent opportunity here with Florida, Georgia, with their usual spot in Jacksonville, the stadium undergoing renovations. So they could have played this game in Gainesville. They could have played this game in Athens. But yet they decided to play this game in Atlanta. Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Dang it, college football. We had an excellent opportunity to do something special there. And you screwed that one up. So that's also on the docket for that week. I have Ohio State at USC. That is just another big game for the Trojans, another big game for Ohio State. Traveling out west to LA, 2 playoff contenders. I have that one as my favorite for Week 9. Week 10, one of the most loaded slates. I believe this is November 7th. So if you have any plans for fall weddings, cancel them on that day. If you plan on going to a birthday party that day, cancel plans. Cancel all your plans on November 7th. Let me just read to you this slate. Oregon at Ohio State. The preseason number 1 and 2 teams. Miami at Notre Dame. Notre Dame got left out of the playoff last year because they lost to Miami. And now they get them into South Bend. You got a team from South Beach traveling to South Bend, Indiana in early November. Georgia is at Ole Miss that day. Texas is at Missouri. Oklahoma is at Florida. BYU at Utah, the Holy War, one of the best rivalries in the sport. Penn State is at Washington that day. And I just threw this one in here. Friday night, you got SMU at Virginia Tech. I took the easy way out. I have 2 favorites for that day. Oregon at Ohio State, obviously, and then Miami at Notre Dame. When we first started this show, I did a segment where I listed my top 10 most anticipated games of the college football season, and both of these games were on that list. And they happen to fall on the same weekend. I just hope they're not at the same time, because if they're at the same time, we're going to have the dual screen action, and it's going to be a little tough to focus there with both of those games going on at the same time. Week 11, you have Texas at LSU, you have Michigan at Oregon, Missouri at Georgia, USC at Indiana, Tennessee at Texas A&M, and Ole Miss at Oklahoma, which was a phenomenal game a year ago. I have Texas at LSU. Can you imagine Lane Kiffin and LSU walking into Austin, Texas to take on Steve Sarkisian and Arch Manning? I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Week 12, not quite yet rivalry week. You have Texas A&M at Oklahoma, Indiana at Washington, Texas A&M at Oklahoma, LSU at Tennessee, and SMU at Notre Dame. Again, one of the gripes that I have with the college football calendar as a whole is you have these weekends in the schedule where it's just a loaded weekend, and there are so many marquee matchups. And then there are other weekends where it's a lighter slate, still important, but it's a lighter slate. And I just wish that college football, if you have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, the peanut butter is so chunky and just not spread out evenly across the bread. And I compare that to college football. The schedule, you just have these weekends where it's just marquee matchup after marquee matchup on one singular weekend. Then you go to maybe another weekend, it's light. Spread it out a little bit more. So with week 12, I decided to go Texas A&M at Oklahoma. You have Marcel Reed and Mike Elko and co. going to Norman, Oklahoma to take on these are two playoff contenders in the preseason, at least. Two teams that made the playoff last year. So I think that's going to be really fun. And then you get to rivalry week, week 13. You have Texas at Texas A&M on a Friday. You have Washington at Oregon. You have Oklahoma at Missouri, USC at UCLA, Tennessee at Vandy, and Michigan at Ohio State. The game. Now, I fought against my better judgment because, to me, Michigan and Ohio State is the best rivalry we have in college football, and then right under it is the Iron Bowl. I'd be willing to hear both sides of the argument. I fought against my better judgment, and I went to one of the better renewed rivalries that we have in the sport, and that is Texas at Texas A&M. Texas A&M has yet to beat Texas since they joined the SEC. And if Texas A&M wants to make the playoff, this is going to be a game that they need to win. So, and then out of respect, because I love the USA, I love America, I love our troops, Army and Navy on December 2nd at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. I'm so patriotic. I'm going to put that out on the socials later, just in case you missed the segment. I drafted the best game each week of the college football season, so make sure that you check that out and make sure that you're subscribed. I've been looking forward to this too. Big Ten quarterback rankings. I'm just going to go through 1 through 10 and rank my top 10 quarterbacks within the Big Ten because it seems like we have 47 quarterbacks now with all the teams that are in the Big Ten. So I'm just going to make it easy, and I'm going to go my top 10 quarterbacks in the Big Ten, starting with number 1. It may surprise you, maybe not. I'm going Dante Moore at Oregon as the number 1 quarterback. He's viewed as a day 1 draft prospect in the 2027 draft, was viewed as a top 5 pick in last year's NFL draft, decided to come back for his senior year. Dante Moore doesn't have the biggest arm, but what he does have, one of his biggest strengths is he's extremely accurate with the football. That's very conducive to this offense. No, they have a new offensive coordinator. Will Stein is no longer there, as he is now the head coach at Kentucky. But they have Drew Maringer, who was on staff last year. He has been promoted to offensive coordinator from tight ends coach. Basically the same system. And their offense relies on quarterbacks getting the ball out quick, basically being a point guard. Dante Moore fits him very well. Will he have better performances in big-time games when the spotlight's on him. That's the thing that I think he's going to answer the bell this year. So that's why I have Dante Moore at number 1. At number 2, these guys are pretty much interchangeable. Julian Sayin was a Heisman finalist a year ago. I think he finished 4th in the race there for the Heisman. He looks like he put on a tremendous amount of weight. Good weight, in a way. Looks like he put on a lot of muscle. And we know that he's going to have no shortage of weapons to throw to. Jeremiah Smith being example 1A. But Ohio State's never going to have a shortage of receivers. So he's going to have plenty of guys to throw to, has a very experienced offensive line in front of him, has a good run game, and he has a new offensive coordinator by the name of Arthur Smith, who came by way of the Pittsburgh Steelers, came from the NFL. I have some experience covering Arthur Smith, given that he was the offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans at one point. I think that is going to be a beautiful marriage between him and Julian Sayin. At number 3, I could have went a variety of ways right here. I decided to go Josh Hoover of Indiana. First of all, if Curt Cignetti says they have all they need at quarterback, who am I to doubt Curt Cignetti? So that's the first reason. The second reason, he was a 3-year starter at TCU. Very productive 3-year starter, by the way, at TCU. One of the things that he needs to work on is cutting down on the interceptions, cutting down on the turnovers. He has 33 interceptions in the last 3 years. He has 24 interceptions in the last 2 years. So, and last year he had 5 games with at least 2+ interceptions. I'm willing to blindly trust that that is going to take care of itself, especially if you're going to play for Curt Cignetti. You can't be playing for Curt Cignetti and turning the ball over. So, will he be a Heisman Trophy winner like Fernando Mendona? I don't know. But I'm willing to trust Curt Cignetti. So I have Josh Hoover at 3. At number 4, I have Jaden Maiava of USC. 3rd year in the system there. When has Lincoln Riley ever not had a productive quarterback? I like Jaden Maiava. Really high on Jaden Maiava. I have him at 4. At number 5, Bryce Underwood at Michigan. Understand that his freshman year wasn't great. But Kyle Whittingham bringing over Jason Beck from Utah it's going to be one of the most talked about coordinator moves in the country. 2 years ago, Jason Beck was at New Mexico, and he took an offense that was ranked 44th and took him to 4th in the span of 1 year. And then at Utah last year, also in the span of 1 year, took an offense that was ranked 104th in 2024 and took him to 4th in the span of 1 year. What does that look like at Michigan? For Bryce Underwood, he was regarded as the number 1 overall prospect in his high school recruiting class, the number 1 quarterback. It's not like all that talent just left his body. And I think Jason Beck, and Jason Beck we trust on the show, I think he's going to get the most out of him. Now, that may not mean Michigan's a playoff contender this year, but Bryce Underwood can still be improved this year without Michigan making the playoff. At number 6, I have Damon Williams of Washington. Really talented if you watch this kid play. Really, really talented. Had over 3,000 passing yards last year, 25 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, added 6 rushing touchdowns on the ground. This is going to be his 2nd year as a full-time starter for Washington. I'm willing to bank on that experience. Being a 2nd-year full-time starter is going to pan out, and he's going to bear some fruit. At number 7, Rocco Becht, as we like to refer to him on as the show, at Penn State. He was a 3-year starter at Iowa State, followed Matt Campbell over from Ames to Happy Valley. Doesn't have to learn a new system because it's pretty much Iowa State's system from last year. Same players and all. Brought over, I think, 24 players from Iowa State. 12 of them are expected starters. He was injured in the back half of last year, missed all of spring ball, so he's going to have to play catch-up there. But I trust Rocco Becht at Penn State, and I think they're going to be pretty solid this year. At number 8, a name that some of you listening might not know, but that's Malik Washington at Maryland. Let me just tell you, Let me just tell you about Malik Washington. This guy can spin the rock. This guy can spin the pill. Last year, may not have the most gaudy numbers, but he was also starting as a true freshman. 17 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, added 4 touchdowns on the ground. Will he be on the team next year? I have no way of knowing that because I expect Mike Locksley to get fired as the head coach of Maryland. Kind of surprised he stuck around for this year. But this is a really good quarterback. Really good quarterback. At number 9, I have Colton Joseph of Wisconsin. He was a 2-year starter at Old Dominion. He has now made the jump to the Power 4, one of the more highly coveted quarterbacks in the transfer portal this last cycle. Listen to this. 32 touchdowns to 15 interceptions and 24 rushing touchdowns over the span of 2 years. And last year alone, he rushed for over 1,000 yards as a quarterback. Wisconsin's been snake bitten at the quarterback position, and if this works out for him, Luke Fickell may keep his job. I'm not excited about this. Because at number 10, considering that I am doing a live show in the state of Tennessee, where there are a lot of Vols fans, my number 10 quarterback in the Big Ten, none other than Nico Iamaleava from UCLA. Again, I know he didn't have a great year last year. I know UCLA in general didn't have a great year last year. You bring in Bob Chesney, who I am infinitely high on. Only one losing season in 16 years of being a head coach. Nico Iamaleava was a 5-star coming out of high school. He's always been talented. Has he had the right coach to get it out of him? Maybe. You could definitely say that with Josh Heupel. I just trust that Bob Chesney is going to be able to get something better out of Nico Iamaleava than what he produced last year. And Nico Iamaleava got better towards the back half of last year. Again, I'm not putting Nico up there with the greats in the Big Ten, but I think he can be improved from where he was last year. I thought about including Anthony Calandria at Nebraska in here. I thought about including Caton Hauser of Illinois in here as well, but I feel pretty good about my top 10. All right, time to make my Heisman Trophy prediction as prediction season rolls on the show. Let me just say this. I know the Heisman Trophy has primarily been a quarterback award. I get all that. There's only one non-quarterback on this list that I could see winning the Heisman Trophy this year. Now, I'm not predicting him to win it, but if there was a non-QB to win the award, I think it would be Jeremiah Smith of Ohio State. He's probably the best player in college football. He would have been a top 5 pick in the NFL draft if he was eligible, but he was too young, and he's going to be a junior this year, and I see him entering the NFL draft after this year. So all that to say, if there was a non-quarterback to win the Heisman, it would be Jeremiah Smith. But I am going quarterback. I thought about C.J. Carr at Notre Dame, who I'm certainly very high on. Arch Manning at Texas is certainly going to be in the conversation. What about Dante Moore at Oregon? Darian Mensah at Miami, who I believe is an upgrade from Carson Beck. Julian Sayin at Ohio State was a Heisman finalist last year, so he could very well be in the running again this year. Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss. John Mateer at Oklahoma, who I actually picked to win the Heisman Trophy last year, but unfortunately he broke his thumb on his throwing hand, and that kind of derailed everything. Jaden Maiava at USC just talked about when has Lincoln Riley ever not had a quarterback that produced for him, and plus he's a year 3 starter. Josh Hoover at Indiana. Can Indiana have a repeat Heisman winner at the quarterback position? And Sam Levitt at LSU. These are all guys that I'm thinking about as potential winners of the Heisman Trophy. The guy that I have winning the award come December. Again, I've been given a crystal ball. I've seen into the future, and I know who's going to win the trophy. And that is Trinidad Chambliss of Ole Miss. People forget that this guy has not played Division I football for even 2 years. His last season of Division I football, or his first season, was last year. So it's his second year playing Division I football. He's the clear-cut starter. There's no quarterback battle in the beginning of the year with Austin Simmons. It's just him. I think that he's going to be better than he was last year. And that is saying a lot because Trinidad Chambliss finished third in the country last year in passing. He had 8 games in which he threw for over 300 yards last year, which was the most in college football, 22 touchdowns passing, only 3 interceptions, and 8 touchdowns added on the ground. I know they're going to have a different offensive coordinator, a guy by the name of John David Baker, who came over from East Carolina. And prior to that, he was actually at Ole Miss, so he's returning to Oxford. It's basically the same system that Lane Kiffin ran last year. It's pretty much the same thing. So he doesn't really have to learn a new offense. I believe that Trinidad Chambliss is going to be better in year 2. And I believe he's going to win the Heisman Trophy come December. Man, prediction season off to a spicy start. So I wanted to touch on this too, because I was asked this question, and in fact, I got into a debate on this on a radio show as part of a couple days ago. What is the future of Kalen DeBoer at Alabama? Is he on the hot seat? Again, I think this could be its own show. I really do. And I'm going to try to keep it brief. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. Kalen DeBoer signed a contract extension at the end of last year with Alabama after making the playoff and after winning a game in the playoff. I know what happened when they played Indiana in the Rose Bowl. Got splattered, but it's much better than his first year. So he is tied down through 2033, a 7-year contract worth $87.5 million. And his buyout, if he were to get fired at Alabama this year, is north of $60 million. So when people ask me, is Kalen DeBoer on the hot seat this year? My answer is no, he's not. I think his job is actually very secure. Where I think a lot of this stems from, and to be honest, I don't know how much of this talk is actually real versus how much of it is fake. I don't think Kalen DeBoer has done a bad job at Alabama. It's just not what Nick Saban did. Now, Alabama fans, and I'm speaking to you directly, and I love my Alabama fans that are listening to the show right now. But you guys have been pretty spoiled. I think we can all agree on that with the 6 national championships under Nick Saban and constantly being number 1 in all the rankings and having the Heisman Trophy winners. You guys have been spoiled on that. Kalen DeBoer is not a bad coach. He made a national championship in 23 with Washington, so the guy knows what he's doing, and he has one of the highest winning percentages among active head coaches in college football. So one of the things that I say is that buyout. Do you really want to pay the buyout to fire Kalen DeBoer? And 2, if you want to fire Kalen DeBoer, who else are you going to go get? They swung and missed on guys like Dan Lanning, who is going to stay at Oregon for the foreseeable future. I don't see him leaving anytime soon. Steve Sarkisian, you swung and missed on him. He's at Texas. He's happy at Texas. He has the best roster that he's had at Texas. Lane Kiffin's not going to Alabama. He's at LSU. So if you're going to fire him, you got to have a backup plan. Who are you going to go get? And not only that, who are you going to go get that's going to be better than Kalen DeBoer? Because you can shout and scream all you want to that you want Kalen DeBoer run out of town, but you got to have somebody that's going to be better. Because there are guys out there who I've heard names being floated around. If this scenario was to happen, then I'm just like, I'd take Kalen DeBoer over him. And I know Kalen DeBoer, the Florida State game in week 1 last year, that's not how Alabama's supposed to look. The game against Indiana, getting splattered 38-3, that's not how Alabama's supposed to look. In what world is Alabama getting blown out by 35 points, 5 touchdowns against Indiana? It just doesn't happen. I get it. Totally understand where you're coming from. But if you're going to fire Kalen DeBoer, you have to have a backup option who's going to be better. And I just don't see that right now. So I think Kalen DeBoer's job is secure. And plus, in this day and age where teams are scrapping for every last dime, you really think they're going to willingly pay north of $60 million to fire Kalen DeBoer? I just think I think Kalen DeBoer, unless things go terribly off the rails and they don't even make a bowl this year, that's the only reason I can see Kalen DeBoer getting fired. But I think he's fine. Plus, it doesn't really matter if there are fans out there who want Kalen DeBoer fired, unless they're the ones giving millions of dollars to the school. Their opinion on Kalen DeBoer's job security doesn't really matter. That's just the truth of it. That is just the truth of it. So this is going to bring me no joy to talk about here. I actually almost decided to not talk about it on the show, but there was growing pressure. There were people asking me my opinion on this, and there are no games going on right now, so I figured, might as well. But yeah, I see the mess that is going on with NFL players potentially returning to college football. I see the NCAA consistently losing in court. They have like an 0-104 track record against the local courts. It's not been good. So let me just kind of paint the picture for you here. In June, the NCAA made a pretty big rule change that they're going to start allowing their athletes, they're going to give them 5 years to play 5 years in college football, 5 years of eligibility, which I actually thought was fair. I thought it was a fair compromise. I liked it. And you know how very rarely I compliment the NCAA, but I actually like that rule change for them. In the same breath, you have to have the understanding that the guys that just hit the exit door, the guys that had to leave because they exhausted their eligibility, those seniors who are now in the NFL, might have gone undrafted, might be fighting for a roster spot. And if they do, they're fortunate enough to make the roster, they might be getting paid a league minimum. You have to understand that those guys are going to be upset because they weren't afforded the same opportunities that the current athletes are being afforded. And honestly, if I'm a class of 2022 athlete, I think it's a totally fair argument, and I get where you're coming from. So when you take this to the local courts, that's kind of been a theme nowadays. If you don't like something that the NCAA proposes, you find a friendly judge, you find your local court, and you rule against them. You get a temporary injunction, you get a restraining order, and you ultimately get what you want. Well, on July 31st, a Colorado-based federal judge by the name of Charlotte Sweeney, no relation to Dabo Sweeney, by the way, ruled that all athletes who started their career in 2022 will be allowed a fifth season. So Indiana, they took full advantage of this ruling. They got 2 of their defensive linemen that were on last year's team back, and some teams are capitalizing on that. And as of recently, there's been a ruling in the Louisiana State Court, basically filing on behalf of players that are in the NFL. There are, I think, 16 players mentioned in this lawsuit that are currently exploring the idea of coming back to college. Some of them, like Jack Pyburn, who was a linebacker at LSU last year, who got 2 sacks for the Tampa Bay Bucks against the New York Jets in their first preseason game. These guys are exploring the possibility of coming back to college. And honestly, if I'm a player, I totally understand where they're coming from. Why would I turn down making millions of dollars in college for another year versus making league minimum in the NFL? And there's no guarantee that you're going to make the roster. So if they're allowed, as a player, I'd want to come back too. And I don't typically compliment, and I'm going to go to college basketball here for a second. I don't typically compliment Dan Hurley in this light, but I am this time. There was a conundrum in college basketball last year where Charles Bediako, who played 3 years in the NBA and the G League, came back and played for Alabama. You had players coming from the G League left and right and playing in college basketball last year. And Dan Hurley basically said, and I'm paraphrasing here, as coaches, we don't have to allow this. The same is true in college football. If you're a college football coach, you don't have to allow these guys. You don't have to go sign them. You don't have to go recruit them. You can make the choice not to do that because we all know, we're all thinking the same thing here. We're all sharing a brain. This is dumb. This is a load of stupidity. NFL players coming back to college, I was hoping this would never happen. And a lot of people are, starting to, not that they haven't already, the mess is getting a little bit bigger in college athletics with this type of stuff. Now I pivot to where my mind really went when I heard this news. The mess that college football has behind the scenes has never really touched the NFL. It's never really affected the NFL. And now it's starting to, because now you're taking players out of the NFL and you're bringing them back to college. So, and this is the stance that I've always had. College football has always been kind of like the minor leagues for the NFL. They've marketed players on their dime so that when they get to the NFL, if you're just strictly an NFL fan, you know who Fernando Mendoza was far before he ever played a snap in the NFL, far before he ever played a snap in the preseason, which I'm told he's actually playing right now. He's playing 2 quarters versus the Houston Texans. The NFL has never really repaid college football in a sense because college football's done all the marketing for them. So will the NFL get involved with this now that college football's taken their players? I'm interested to know. I'm really interested to know. So those are my thoughts on this. I wanted to keep it pretty brief because I'm so excited to the point where we actually have games to talk about. And next week we're ramping this thing up to 3 shows a week, and we're going to preview all the week 0 games, and we're going to recap all the week 0 games. We'll have actual games to talk about, and I'm so excited about that. So pretty good pace on the show. As you can tell, a lot of content so far. I have a couple more things to wrap up here. I wanted to continue our fall camp intel series with the Miami Hurricanes. You know, we've been going coast to coast, providing fall camp intel for teams, providing some previews. What are fair expectations for the Miami Hurricanes this year? Coming off a national championship appearance against Indiana, went 13-3, 10 wins in the regular season. I actually think, and I've said this before, I've been pretty out in front of this, that I think Miami as a whole might have a better team than they had last year. And it starts at the quarterback position where I believe they firmly upgraded from what they had. Not that Carson Beck wasn't good for them. He was. But they went and they got Darian Mensah out of Duke. And Darian Mensah, 4,000-yard passer last year. I believe it was second in the country. It was second in the country in passing last year. He is an upgraded quarterback for Miami. The receiver room, Malachi Toney, was just an alien for him last year. As a true freshman, he's back for another year. They went and they got Darian Mensah's leading receiver at Duke last year, Cooper Barkate, who is a legit vertical threat. Now, they did have to dismiss a player from their team recently, Cam Vaughn, who is a transfer from West Virginia. Mario Cristobal did not disclose the exact reasoning, but he was going to be another piece for them at wide receiver. He's been dismissed from the program, but they still have, big name guys like Malachi Toney, Cooper Barkate. So pretty big deal for him there. I'm going to trust the offensive line implicitly as long as Mario Cristobal is there. They only returned one starter. They only returned one starter on their offensive line from last year, and that is Matthew McCoy. He started 15 games for him at left guard last year. He's moving to right tackle. They have Jackson Cantwell, who is the number 1 offensive tackle in the portal. He's probably going to start for him at left tackle. He's a 5-star. They're not – the cupboard is not bare for Miami. They still have a lot of talent, and Mario Cristobal, being an offensive line guy, playing offensive line at Miami back in his heyday, I'm going to trust that unit as long as Cristobal's there. The defensive line, know they have to replace Ruben Bain. I know they have to replace Akeem Mesidor, but they have returning production from last year's team. Marquise Lightfoot's still there. Justin Scott is still there. Ahmad Moten is still there. They went and they got Damon Wilson from Missouri, one of the most highly coveted edge rushers in the transfer portal. That defensive line is going to be clicking. Linebacker, I think they'll be fine there. Mo Torre returns to anchor that front in the front 7. Cornerbacks, OG Frederic. This defense, it may not be as good as it was last year, but as long as Corey Heatherman is there at defensive coordinator, they can at least be on par. Now, when I say that Miami might have a better team than they did last year, that doesn't mean that I think they're going to win the national championship. They might. They might contend for one like they did last year. But I also think Miami can be better than they were last year as a team and still not make the national championship game. Partly because you have teams like Notre Dame, my preseason number one. You have Ohio State, who's going to stand in your way. Oregon, obviously. Texas, with the most talented roster they've had. Georgia is going to have something to say about that. All these teams that are super uber duper talented that are going to be standing in your way. So I just want to caution everybody, when I say Miami can be better than they were last year, that's what I mean. That's what I mean, and I expect that team to be very, very good. And I'm excited. I'm excited to watch the Miami Hurricanes. Final thing for us here on the show tonight. Latest news and notes around college football. This is where I'm going to talk about the Tennessee-Alabama jerseys in this segment. So Tennessee and Alabama recently announced that they were both going to wear their home jerseys. For Tennessee, they're going to be wearing the orange. For Alabama, they're going to be wearing the crimson. In 2026 and 2027, this needed to happen. If I were to go up to a random person on the street who may not know a lot about college football, and I were to ask them, what are some things that make college football special? They would probably name 3 to 4 things before they actually got to the actual play on the field. One of the things that they'd mention that you hear me talking about all the time is tradition and pageantry in the sport. Traditionally, Alabama and Tennessee, the third Saturday in October, is one of the better rivalries that we have in college football. And they will both be wearing their home jerseys like they have in the past. A brilliant move, a great win, not just for this rivalry, but for college football. I love it. At the same time, Tennessee just unveiled their new Smoky Grays. That's been a theme for them every year. Tennessee just recently partnered with Adidas, moving away from Nike, partnering with Adidas. They released their new Smoky Gray uniforms today. And some thoughts. I'm sure you've seen the pictures floating around social media. So I like the up top. I like the up top jerseys. I like how they have the interlocking UT, which is the old school logo. They have the old school Adidas logo. The detailing, right? That you have the Robert Neyland patch and Neyland Stadium kind of outlined on the shoulder pads. The thing that I don't like is it clashes with the pants a little bit too much for my liking. The pants are not even white. It's more so of an off-white, a cream color. For Tennessee, I just wish they'd kind of embrace the smoky gray look and make it all smoky gray. I know the cleats are smoky gray, but the socks are white. So I have a little bit of an issue there. I just wish that it was all smoky gray. Again, I like the jerseys. I just don't like the gray on the white. And then for the helmets, too, I like the matte gray. I prefer interlocking UT and orange interlocking UT on the side of the helmet instead of the stripes that they have. They have a really cool star on the back, too, which I like. But overall, wasn't the biggest fan, if I'm being honest, of the smoky grays. This year, they release a new smoky gray type uniform each and every year. But those were my thoughts on those. And then the final thing that I wanted to get to, congratulations to Brent Venables and Oklahoma on the contract extension, a 6-year contract that runs through 2031. He's going to make an average of $10.5 million per year. I think it was deserved after making the college football playoff last year and hosting a college football playoff game. No, they didn't win the game, but they certainly have high expectations again this year. I just want to see how Brent Venables responds in year 5 as the Oklahoma head coach. Went 6-7 in his first year, followed that up with a 10-3 season. They went back to 6-7 2 years ago, and then they were 10-3 this last year. So you see this limbo of 6-7 and 10-3 between both of those different records. What does that look like this year? What does that look like with a healthy John Mateer, with a really good defense, with receivers to throw to? Does the run game improve? The run game was not good at all for him last year, which should never be the case at a school like Oklahoma. They need to be able to run the football. So with a healthy John Mateer and a really good defense, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Oklahoma made the playoffs again this year. Now, I didn't predict it. At least I didn't predict it on my CFP predictions 1.0, which, by the way, I'll be releasing my college football playoff predictions 2.0 next week. So make sure that you're tuned in for that. What does Brent Venables in Oklahoma look like this year? That's my question mark. And that's also the show. Shorter show than what we're used to having. Only I went less than an hour. Usually we go an hour plus. But had a lot to get to. Brief pace on the show. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel if you're not already. And if you think you are, but not 100% sure, just go ahead and double check. And also, would it hurt to tell 5,000 of your closest friends about us? We want to make this thing as big as possible. We want to make this thing as great as possible. Tell them we're talking college football year round. And we don't do any of the hot takes. We build this show for the audience, what the audience wants to hear, what will draw the audience in. And so far, a little over a month into this thing, I've been really impressed with the channel analytics, the live viewership, people that have gone back and watched later. That's the beauty of podcasting and digital media. Is if you can't watch live, you can always go back and watch later. So really appreciate everybody that's done that. Just make sure that you're subscribed and follow me on the socials too while you're at it. We will be back again next show on Monday. We're ramping this thing up. Live shows Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Same time, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to have some fun. We have actual games on the horizon. Next week, college football playoff predictions 2.0 will be my final college football playoff predictions. We're going to preview all the games in week 0, and I'm sure there will be other stuff that comes up as well. But in the meantime, I got to go eat some dinner, maybe go watch some preseason football too. Take care. God bless. We'll talk again on Monday.